Are inter-Korean relations getting back on track to peace and reconciliation? South and North Korea decided to reconnect their hotlines last week and work on restoring mutual trust and cooperation. This comes a year after Pyongyang unilaterally severed all lines of communication and blew up their joint liaison office in their border town of Pyeongyang. The move towards peace and cooperation has been welcomed by both Seoul and Washington, but there have been questions over the timing and the intent of the decision. We discussed the issue today with Stephen NOERPER, Adjunct Professor of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University, and Soo Kim, Policy Analyst at Rand Corporation, who was a former CIA analyst. A warm welcome to you both, and well, a lot to talk about today. After the Hanoi summit between Washington and Pyongyang broke down in 2019, North Korea has, of course, been giving South Korea the cold shoulder. And while South Korean President Moon Jae-in has continuously called for the resumption of inter-Korean engagement and has on numerous occasions offered the North help with dealing with COVID-19, he was continuously ignored. So, Stephen, why do you think North Korea has agreed to re-establish the hotlines at this point?
Well, it's an interesting point in time. As you point out, it has been quite a while. They could be calculating a few different things. One is that the time may be ripe, having waited out the new process introduced by the Biden administration. Perhaps they feel it's time to engage with both Seoul and Washington, and to do that first through Seoul. Secondly, it may be economic. Certainly, Kim Jong-un has spoken of his concerns about the economy, has pointed to the party cadre for their failures on that front. And perhaps with that will come some humanitarian assistance, especially given reports of needs by way of foodstuffs and a very poor crop yield. So there may be humanitarian economic incentives beyond the political timing. But it comes together in an interesting fashion in that Moon Jae-in has only until March of next year. So they may also be calculating that with this progressive administration in Seoul, let's see what kind of deal we can get.
And Sue, I wonder what you're thinking about this. Why do you think the two sides decided to reconnect the hotlines right now, and especially when the two leaders had apparently been exchanging letters since the spring?
Sure. So I think, Dr. NOERPER nailed it. It's all about timing, and I think timing was very uncanny. It's also really not playing, I think, in favor of the Moon administration. Dr. NOERPER mentioned that we only have about a year left remaining in Moon's term, so not much space for the Moon administration to really make any impact, make a splash in inter-Korean relations. From North Korea's optics, even if Kim Jong-un does not really seal a deal with the South Koreans or make significant progress in maintaining his nuclear leverage over the United States and South Korea, just the fact, I think, that he was able to get the South Koreans to once again lay the groundwork, to bend over backwards, to do all the work while Pyongyang basically just endorses it, I think that's going to be enough for now. And he probably knows that the Moon administration has been, I would say, desperate to get something from the North Koreans. So he knows that he has the upper hand, and he knows that there's nothing to lose. And of course, there's the humanitarian component as well. So all in all, I think this is, when we're looking at timing, it's all in favor of Kim Jong-un and probably less for Seoul.
Well, Stephen, there's no doubting President Moon's ambitions to strengthen relations with Pyongyang, but what would you say about Kim Jong-un? What do you think that the North is trying to get out of this?
Well, probably a few things. One, they want political leverage, especially at this time, given the fact that there is this short window for the Moon Jae-in administration. They probably want to see what can be put on the table, looking ahead and fully knowing that you may have another progressive or a conservative administration in Seoul that could alter things a bit. They're also looking for inroads to the Biden administration and a resumption of talks with the United States. Ultimately, they would like normalization with the U.S. But the path is through Seoul, and that's what worked well for the progress we saw in 2018 that saw the three leader meetings between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. And then lastly, this point about having been closed now for over a year with concerns about the pandemic and really a diplomatic shutdown after the talks in Hanoi did not go in a manner they'd like. So perhaps it's coming in from the cold and a bit of a diplomatic opening in order to secure what may be needed by way of vaccines by way of foodstuffs and other economic assistance, and to get those sanctions removed. And to do that, you'll probably need South Korea to go to the UN Security Council and argue through the prism of inter-Korean economic cooperation in order to lessen those sanctions.
Well, Stephen, Kim Jong-un's younger sister, she issued a warning on Sunday about the upcoming joint military drill between South Korea and the US. Do you think the two allies would scale it down? And at this point, would scaling it down be a good idea?
Well, they've already talked about, essentially a scale, and certainly it's scaled down relative to what it was in earlier years. And that has been done to provide some diplomatic leverage. And really, that's been the case, for the last couple of years. The United States and South Korea have to think that through in terms of the level of visibility. But I've no doubt that they are still intent on trying to create that diplomatic room for North Korea to proceed. And so North Korea is simply echoing what it has said before, which is that those joint exercises they view as a threat to them. Of course, the United States and South Korea have lots of reasons for readiness and for political visibility and viability to continue them, but in a tick-down manner, in a less visible manner, is certainly something that serves the cause of international and regional diplomacy.
And while there has been cautious optimism about the restoration of these hotlines, which were established during the Kim Dae-jung era, North Korea has, of course, cut off the communication lines again and again, and even blew up the contact office near Kaesong. I think I said Panmunjom earlier, so correction there. But so really, Sue, I'm wondering if it's realistic to expect a significant breakthrough in inter-Korean ties, or whether we're just going to see, once again, a short-lived period of rapprochement while North Korea gets the sort of support that it wants.
So actually, Kim Jong-un's younger sister, Kim Yo-jong, explicitly said that the resumption of the hotline is basically just a reconnection, a physical reconnection of what's been severed. And she said that the two Koreas, or South Korea rather, should basically not hold its breath when it comes to making significant progress in inter-Korean rapprochement and reconciliation. This is to indicate that, of course, we can read it, I think, in many ways, but for me, I think the instinctive response was this is basically one side getting extremely excited over something that is routine and something that's expected, while again, the other side basically just watches and see what happens, and to see how badly the South Koreans really want something to show for all of its efforts in the past 4 years. When it comes to peace and reconciliation and true progress, North Korea is going to want to see more from the South Koreans. So, I mean, one step, of course, is to bully Seoul into scaling back the joint exercises. We're talking about simulations that are really not equivalent to actually the physical gathering of U.S. South Korean soldiers and actually the physical, the effort that's put in there. So gradually, and I think incrementally, these are going to affect not just the readiness, but also the faith that needs to be restored between the two allies. So from the North Korean perspective, there's short-term gains, but I think they know that if these were to continue, they were to keep pushing, gradually we're going to see more wear and tear in the alliance with the United States as well. So again, all in all, it's probably just going to be a win-win for Kim Jong-un and less for Seoul.
And as you said, Sue, there seems to have been a strong bubble of excitement here in Seoul anyway about the possibility of a virtual meeting between Moon and Kim, talks of which the Unification Ministry in the North has now denied. But what do you think about the possibility? And if they do hold such a meeting, what kind of announcement do you think we could expect?
The question about whether, I think the question we need to ask is, why do we need to hold a virtual summit in the first place when, we haven't really heard anything from the North Koreans up until this point. And we know that Kim Jong-un is not going to give up his nuclear weapons. So if anything, I think the virtual summit is just going to be political, and there's going to be a lot of atmospherics and the optics of it are going to look nice. But at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything when it comes to persuading the North Koreans, or Kim Jong-un rather, to consider denuclearization or even consider, addressing his country's human rights issues. It might even set unintentionally the United States on the path towards another set of maybe not official negotiations, but the burden, or I guess the obligation to say something or to show, the next steps when it comes to Washington's informal response or acknowledgement to the Inter-Korean summit. So we have to look at, I think, the substantive differences, the value of having a virtual summit when it's not really called for. And the only thing that we can think about that's actually motivating this is the last remaining year of the Moon administration. And perhaps they want to show that the past 4 or 5 years of putting effort into improving relations with North Korea have actually borne fruit before spring of next year.
Well, Stephen, if President Moon and Kim Jong-un were communicating since as early as April, then that would have actually been before the South Korea-US summit. Do you think US-North Korean relations might have been on the agenda? And also, Washington has made it quite clear that the door's open for dialogue with Pyongyang. But do you think Kim Jong-un is ready to sit down and talk?
Well, I hope that U.S.-North Korean relations were on that agenda. I don't think we should look at them as mutually exclusive. We need a strong inter-Korean process, right? And that should probably take the lead. And the alliance is strong enough after 70 years to adjust to the necessity of that. And there are different strategic priorities, and reconciliation is the ultimate one, but integration and unification are the one that are high on the agenda for the Blue House. And that inter-Korean process shouldn't be overlooked. I'm actually much more optimistic about the idea that this is a coming in out of the cold and that there is a necessity here to try to at least allow, not to expect necessarily anything great to come out of this process, but at least lean into it and allow the possibility that those hotlines are an important channel of communication that has been restored. In the event of an outbreak of conflict, they can mitigate that. And we need to get back to the comprehensive military agreement and steps that can be taken by the two Koreas to bring down the level of tensions on the peninsula. Those are incredibly important. They date to the fall of 2018. And so seeing U.S. support for that. And I would note that the United States, as well as the United Nations, the Secretary General, both came out in strong support of the progress this week. And I think it's in the interest of all the parties involved. And so, yes, it may lead to a diplomatic channel and improvement with the Americans for the North Koreans. But let's not overlook the importance of that inter-Korean process. And let's not overlook the importance with the Secretary General's support of it, of the United Nations and its imprimatur, which is the one that North Korea seems to recognize. So let's look for channels of communication and channels for dialogue to move things forward.
So the inter-Korean peace process, of course, is very important. But at the same time, many questions as to whether President Moon is pushing for another US-North Korea summit. And well, see, at the last Olympics in Pyeongyang, we saw a flurry of exchanges happen between South and North Korea. And this led to the rapprochement and really set the scenes for the Trump-Kim summit talks a few months later. Do you expect to see a similar course of events this time around?
Was that for me or for Steve?
I think this is all.
Thank you.
I think this is all really dependent on really North Korea, just how willing Kim Jong-un is going to be to entertain another diplomatic, perhaps PR success. I think along the way, there's going to be some perks and concessions that are made from South Korea, perhaps even by the international community over time. But I would say that it's still a bit too far down the road, to borrow the ethos of Kim Yo-jong. It's too far down the road, and a lot of things could happen. And I think the North Koreans are going to try to see what else is South Korea willing to do. And of course, it's also going to look at the responses from the United States, the international community, to see what the appetite is for another North Korean effort to try to persuade or to give the pretenses that it's willing to play peace and reconciliation just for the time being, so that it's able to reap whatever diplomatic and political benefits it can get from this play.
Well, I suppose as ever, it's very hard to read into what North Korea is thinking, and we'll have to wait and see in the weeks to come. But this is all we have time for today. That was Stephen NOERPER, Adjunct Professor of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University, and Soo Kim, Policy Analyst at RAND Corporation and former CIA Analyst. Thank you both so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching.